So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu, we find the layers of understanding of the time of the restoration period, where you can read then Yeshayahu chapter 1:8 and understand what then the prophet was explaining as far as the first holy city returning. As it was, he was explaining of the first holy city on the land of Cush when Yohanan himself first set it up. Let's then make an evaluation of this topic, because extremely important besides the new restoration period of the Gentile level, where the high knowledge spoken of by Daniel the prophet then makes itself very evident during our time, where computerized systems are taking over the entire world's trade. As we then read Daniel, for instance, you find then knowledge shall increase. Explains then, prior of this topic, the roaming of the people. Simply means then the Hebraic people would be roaming in the earth for 1,000 years, and then at the end of these 1,000 years, and obviously ended in 2009, then would become a transition time where then you understand the restoration period taking place at the same time with this new transitional time from the 1,000 years of deceit. Then actively, understandably, we are then during a time where then the computer takes its rightful position and then reducing the stealing from many nations. So let's then make an evaluation what's going on as far as Daniel the 11th chapter. What should we glean from these understandings, so then we can have the best of our understanding, so then we can produce fruit? Because the whole situation is not only becoming saved in order to enjoy then the new system. That's not the point. How can then the people produce fruit? And why then is Africa so much involved with the situation and so profoundly involved with a couple of areas of Africa? Firstly then, the prophet has mentioned the land of Cush, the first area, modern Sudan. Second, he explains the place beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. As we understand, then, there is a strong link with the Congo and Europe via Belgium. So then, since if these powerful forces are at work, and at the time they are being placed in a situation where they must confront and they must gather forces and forward motions, so then Daniel the 11th chapter can be completed. Liking it or not, these nations involved, they won't be able to remain stagnated for a long time. At some point in time, they are going to make forward motions, so then these layers of Daniel the 11th chapter can take place. But what is then important for Africa? What is going on in Africa? How are they receiving these new information? Well, sadly, unfortunately, there are not very many people teaching these layers, so then Africans could become more aware of and educated of the Israelic lineages, instructions, and then teaching other people, showing them the layers of understanding at least. You find in many areas there is a mixture of either Islam or Muslims, or then Christianity. But then the Israelic lineage, you don't find very many people showing truly these layers of understanding, so then they can become aware of where they stand once these powerful motions then becomes evident. Reading from Daniel, for instance, the verse 1:4 explains then the Soviet Union later coming with much equipment and a great army. Then explains the role of the violent ones. Now, are these violent ones are going to be pro-tabernacling, or at this very moment in time they are pro the updating of the new trade system? Because we have to work with both layers at the same time. Have to work with the layer of tabernacling. They have to work with the unfortunate layer of deceit, as far as what they have believed, and then with the layer of the gentile trade. These are the layers they must work with every time, every day. As we know, Congo is in a situation where they are trying to lease the land so then they can get more economy from these new objectives. Now, are they aware of the influence of those areas, for instance, related with the mines, and also the linkage with the new system? At some point in time, the people are going to become more educated, and the main objective is linking up then the mines and the economy of Congo then on the net, so then they can do their trade, yet developing the land. But then comes a very important understanding from Galah, Revelation. The Messiah himself, when he was involved with these understandings given, as Yohanan then was in the first holy city on the land of Cush, he received these understandings and he began then copying, or then he was recording what the Messiah was speaking with him. What was the objective of the Messiah? Showing him the preparations for the autumn. The spring feast was completed. The Messiah knew that it was a spring and autumn, and then the autumn feast was yet lacking. So the Messiah then completed what the prophets already prophesied. But since he was explaining further, because many of the manuscripts of the prophets were destroyed because of the ignorance of the people of the time, then the Messiah showed them what those meant. But then, as then Africa is involved with so many of these layers at the same time, are they going to become strong in maintaining the path? Because the Messiah said himself, each of us, we must then decide and maintain the straight path. Was explained before. As far as Yohanan, and then Shimon is a great word for the nation of Africa as far as truly understanding the original manuscripts. And obviously many Africans, they get ferocious when they understand they were deceived. But this section shows us then Shimon. Then the Messiah himself, because Shimon had denied him not the first time but the second and third times, then the Messiah was saying to him what he should do. As per the history of the completion of the spring feast, you have 4 recorders of the spring feast. A couple of them from the Hebraic lineage. You find then Mitchiyahu, you find then Yohanan, and a couple of Gentiles. You find then Mark and Luke. So 4 recorders of the spring feast. Shimon was then a person that later was able to get some writings because he did understand the importance of maintaining this path. But what does it show as far as Shimon? What was he then involved with? He knew what he was done then was wrong. He denied the Messiah himself. But then he came back from the dead and he was able to have a talk with him, because then he knew for sure what the Messiah was teaching during the time of the spring feast was then true. But what does it then do for us as far as teaching us of a maintenance of a path and not going with the world's flow? Because the world's flow goes to destruction, as the Messiah many times pointed out, and the God of this age and the spirit of this age, and going with the flow of this age. Those are similar. Those are synonymous. And we can't go with the flow of the world. We must understand the holy instructions and maintain the path the Messiah himself kept, and then teaching other people then to lay down their desire of going with the flow of the world and being on the path the Messiah has set, so then at the end we can save our souls. What was the problem with Shimon? Shimon wanted a life of his own. Shimon was very undisciplined. He was, in quote, a wild horse. You couldn't tame with him. These many times got himself in trouble. And the Messiah said then, at later time, he said, when you were a boy, then you used to go everywhere, many places. You did what you wanted. But when you are old, when you are mature, explaining of the Holy Torah, when you are mature in the Holy Torah, then you can go every direction. You have to wait, you have to stay on a path, you have to be patient, have to wait. And Shimon didn't understand. He was wild. He wanted to go over there and do this and then the other. And then he got himself in trouble. And then when you have a certain age, then if you do not have the holy instructions properly set as the consequences of what Shimon did, the Messiah was pointing them. You can't become wild as doing what you did when you are then doing the service. What he was explaining then, Shimon, was this: somebody else more mature in the Torah is going to teach you and take you by the hand. So then you no longer become a wild person. Similar situation, for instance, in Africa. It is important sometimes becoming ferocious when people are then deceived. However, there are areas where then you have to be revealed. So then, as you are ferocious, then you don't give yourself to these ferocious spirits, but then you understand the instructions so you can replace what you did not know as far as being the truth, yet it was scandalized, you were involved with a lie. Then you learn the truth, so then when you become ferocious, you understand there is a path. You not only become ferocious and going everywhere as Shimon was doing. Then somebody else from more maturity in the Torah takes you by the hand. In other words, has to show you. Galah. What does it mean, Galah? It means revelation. If you are a member of some sort of a religious group and you can't explain Revelation, then you are not saved. The very topic of salvation simply means you are revealed. You reveal yourself saved. If you do understand Revelation, then you are saved. If you do understand Revelation and explain it, then you are saved and you bear fruit. Now, how is then Africa going to have these tremendous forces working at the same time? How are they going to handle it? Because not only the southern kingdom, they have the tabernacling on the northern side of the continent, but then in the central portion of the continent, then you have an area extremely rich. What was then the deal with Galah, chapter 1:8? The Messiah himself saying, "Come out of them, my people, so you are not destroyed with them." What was he speaking of? He's speaking of lining up this new trade system and being blind of staying on a path going with the flow. The Messiah is not condemning them for becoming prosperous. That's not the point. But if you give yourself to prosperity and you forget tabernacling, then you are in danger of having your soul straight down. So the Messiah shows an area of balance where then you yourself, as you maintain your path before the Messiah, then you can yourself evaluate where you should be at. Neither you should be involved with a scoundrelized system of lies for 1,000 years of a Messiah non-existent, invented. Neither should you do as Shimon did. But Africa has a unique place because so far most of the African continent is underdeveloped. Yet at some point they're going to receive this entire understanding at once. There is so many events taking place at the same time, it is absolutely overwhelming. For those who are studying the Holy Instructions, only reading this article of the Holy Prophecy already is extremely tense. You can only imagine those people who are in the midst of it. So reading then from Galah or Revelation, can people be revealed? Now some people, they think Revelation came around so then it would confuse Satan. Some people, they are so twisted. They claim the Holy Instructions were then placed because it is then to absolutely confuse Satan. Would God himself be involved with a document of his very own name for this purpose? You have to be joking if you believed it. Revelation is there because from the original manuscripts you can understand the developments of the end times, explaining of the autumn feast. Now, if you don't understand what autumn feast is going to bring, are you saved? The answer is nearly those people who don't understand, they can understand they are not saved. Later on comes then the establishment of the vision, explaining what then Yirmiyahu the prophet had said regarding then the returning of the holy cities. And then the 7 cities of Asia Minor, they must return. Because of these, we are then awakening 1,000 years of dormancy. It's a quite serious length of time. From 1009 to 2009 was in 1,000 years where the cities they laid waste, they are in ruins. As then the Torah and the new instructions regarding then this topic, new because it's becoming new to many people. Are they new as far as comparing with the Torah? No, they were always there. But for the world is new because they were in dormancy for a long time. What should they be learning? What they should be reading? How they should act as they understand these holy instructions? Should they change their lifestyle? Should they remain going on in every first day and then being in those places where they can't grow? So lots of questions coming because as people are becoming aware of these original manuscripts, so they want to change their lives so then each of them can save their own souls. Nobody's going to save their souls for them. Each of them, they must read, understand, and then they have to maintain the path like everybody else, and thousands of Hebraic people that did in the past. So each of us must do our duty. Now, if you are those kinds of people that you believe this false Messiah, where then you do not want to have any trouble, you don't want to have any kind of a concern, you think the Messiah came, died for the world, gave you everything you want, you should be a person with no troubles. If you want a life like this, then you are with the flow of the world. Then your soul is lost. Now, if you want to maintain the path, then you have to understand tabernacling. Not only understand tabernacling, you have to show them those layers of understanding from the prophets, and from the Messiah, and from the Shilishim, or then the apostles. And most importantly, you have to explain Galah, revelation. Now, let's say you're one of those kinds of, the Messiah came and died for the world, then the people should not have any trouble. Those people who are with God, they have no troubles, because the Messiah had taken their troubles away. Can you explain Revelation? If you are in such a dignified position, can you explain Revelation? Then, later on, comes other areas of army movements. These are truly very concerning. The chapter 11 of Daniel explains many kinds of armies going back and forth in many areas, and obviously thousands of people dying along the way. And how then these people should conduct themselves? How they should prepare for these? Reading from the starting of the 11th chapter of Daniel, you explained, and then you find the kingdom of the east, the kingdom of the north, and the kingdom of the south. You have trade coming from the east, you have the military strength to protect this new trade from the north, and you have tabernacling coming from the south. So we are during these times. And each of us must do our duties until the Creator Himself has determined for us to depart, and then given on the responsibility to somebody else. So then, what we know of today and what we know of the truth, we should study further, because we never know when we are going to breathe our last. This truly is the problem. Those people who are lazy, they always waiting for somebody else to do the work, and they want to chase down others to do the job. The problem is, if you yourself do not understand revelation, and if you die, you go straight down. Even if you understand the entire understanding and you don't understand revelation, if you don't produce fruit, if you are one of those kinds of people who have a self-preservating spirit, you know the truth and you don't produce fruit with it, you are lukewarm, then you'll go down. So don't wait for somebody else then to show and teach, whereas you stay behind and then do your junk from behind, and then you expect salvation. You can forget it. The Messiah made in such a way, the Creator Himself made in such a way, where each of us must do our duties, producing fruit. If we don't produce fruit, we are set aside and burned at the end. There is no distinction. Later on, I'm going to evaluate more of the importance of the African continent regarding this time of the restoration period, where then there is a very pivotal point where then shifts from trade and then understanding the importance of delegating instructions or giving advisement of how certain situations should flow. So this is very interesting. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.